You're listening to Travel Tales with Fergal.
We finished season 1 today with a fascinating interview with Richard Fitzpatrick, a Barcelona-based Irish journalist. This is part of our Expat Live series, and Richard gives a great insight into what it's like as an Irishman living in Barcelona. Season 2 will be coming in January, so check out my Instagram at Travel Tales with Fergal for updates. I would like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that next year we get back to some form of normality and we start to be able to dream of travels again. Richard, you're very welcome to the podcast. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Fergal. Delighted.
Were you planning to go home this Christmas?
We would go home pretty much every year at Christmas. We spent a couple here for different reasons over the last 10 years, but normally, we love going back to Christmas. That's the routine. And so this year I was waiting, like most people, I guess, I was waiting until the 1st of December to make a call on it. But it just wasn't feasible to do it.
And, you know, like as an expat living abroad, I suppose that it must make it even harder, does it? Not being able to come home this Christmas.
Yeah. It's funny. It's kind of a couple of things. I suppose it's not so much the fact of Christmas itself. It's just, it's been a year now since I've been home myself, and I just desperate to see my dad and my two aunts who are elderly. So just really keen to see them. The whole Christmas theme, I guess if we were having this chat 2 months ago, I would have been really despondent. But because of the COVID situation and the realization that the vaccine is on the way, the cavalry is en route, that kind of changes things. So
psychologically,
exactly. I've kind of written off this Christmas. It doesn't matter so much. We'll have a normal Christmas next year, so it's only a temporary thing. But it is, it's a huge thing to miss out on. Christmas in Ireland is so special. It's anywhere I've lived around the world, nothing compares to an Irish Christmas.
And why do you think that is? What is it about an Irish Christmas that you love?
There's just, say in Barcelona, there's just not the buzz around, you know, when you go out on the streets. I think the pub itself is a huge factor, because the pub is such an integral part of Irish kind of social life. The buzz when you go into a pub in Ireland in those couple of weeks running up to Christmas, if you're returning to your hometown or village or whatever, seeing friends you wouldn't have seen in a year, there just isn't that kind of buzz around the place in Catalonia or in Barcelona that you would get it back in Ireland. And you know, small things like, I mean, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be lifted every time you hear the Pogues fairy tale in New York, especially anytime you walk into a pub, you know. And those kind of things are coming back through the airport at Dublin. You've the carol singers there. Like, it's just a magical feeling around Ireland at Christmas time.
I heard someone on the radio the other day, a retiree, saying that she goes out to the airport just to watch people coming in and meeting loved ones, just to see the buzz. That's the start of her Christmas, you know?
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, I totally would get it. I've vivid memories of that airport scene. It's really amazing. Yeah.
And did you have any traditions, like, say, yourself or your own family, that you'd have every Christmas that you think of as your memory? Or
yeah, a few that'd be specific to Clare. Like, I mean, the Christmas Day swim in Lahinch, I absolutely love doing that. It's just a great crack, like 200 or 300 people. In my memory, it's always been kind of goodish weather, you know, a nice Christmas day.
What time is that at?
11 o'clock usually in the morning. So just a great sense of camaraderie, and it's a lovely way to kind of kick off the day. One of my best friends, Richard Murphy's birthday is Christmas Eve, so I almost every Christmas Eve for almost 30 years now, that would be my staple, is going into Fafa's pub in Parnell Street in Ennis during the day for a session, or particularly when we were all younger. I mean, we got pretty raucous in there. So yeah, I immediately think of that, and that is a quintessential Irish pub. Fafa is full of locals, and the thing too, like I see the comparison with, say, Barcelona, the pub scene. Like, for example, Christmas Eve in a pub like that, you'd have every age group mixed in together, and it's a real free for all. Whereas in Barcelona, it's a lot more reserved, and the bars with a lot of activity or that are just kind of for young people, people in their 20s or that. Whereas you get that great mix in an Irish pub.
Yeah, particularly at Christmas. It's all ages. That's always my memory, is going to Brogan's on Christmas Eve, say when I was college era, and then just out, when I'd started working in Dublin and coming back, and it's so Irish, like going into Brogan's for 1, because I'd have probably tea at 6, and leave. They'd close probably around 8 or 9, and leaving, and then walking around the town trying to find the chipper open, and they were never open, and always shocked that they weren't open, and going home hungry, and happy.
Yeah, leaving presents behind you in the pub.
Exactly. Yeah. Lugging present. I've done that. Come home with a bag with wrapped present, and it's rattling because it's broken. And what is your partner's name, actually? I forgot.
Michelle. She's Venezuelan. Yeah.
Do you ever go to Venezuela for Christmas?
What we have never been there for Christmas Day, but we've been there for New Year's. We used to always go every year, kind of January time. January, February it's cheap and stuff to get flights at that time. But we were there for New Year's Eve one year.
Is it summer there or winter?
Yeah, Venezuela's paradise, because it's on the equator. It's always summer. Spain is, as you know, is manky in the summer. It's too hot. It's not pleasant. But Venezuela is just 25, 26 every day. Like, it's just, it's beautiful. Like, yeah. So,
and it's New Year's Eve. Is it like big fireworks, or what is it? Or is it big there?
It is a big festival. But Venezuela is such an unusual country, in my experience, and this is the case for the last 20 years, because it's so dangerous there. They live under curfew, effectively. You can't kind of go out at nighttime. So their socializing is all in houses, and they would be very family oriented anyway. You'd have, all the close family, the uncles, the aunts. You'd have about 20 people in the house, but it's all house parties. They don't go to the pubs much. So that's the kind of socializing there. It's a bit unusual. Like, you might go to restaurants the odd time as well, but it's really house-based socializing. Yeah.
So the exact opposite, bar this year. That'll be Ireland this year.
Yeah, totally. And I was thinking about that. Like, Ireland to me is absolutely the pub. That's the hub of the social life, that, and it's very different to Spain, to Venezuela in that regard.
And is it? What about Barcelona then? What is it like there?
Yeah, well, Christmas, the pub definitely is not the center of the social life in Barcelona. People go to the restaurants, the cafes, and the bars, but you socialize at your table. You sit at your table and you get tapas and stuff.
Okay.
Whereas there's nothing to beat the Irish pub, because it's bedlam. You're up at the bar counter and you're meeting randomers, and
exactly.
There's a lot more. I don't know what the word is.
Interaction.
Just the night can take you anywhere.
That's true. Yeah. Are there any traditions in Barcelona, like Catalan Christmas traditions? Do they celebrate it on a different day, or?
Yeah, they do. Christmas is over. It's a long period. It's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then New Year's Eve, and then you have Las Reyes, the three wise men, or the kings, they call it. That's traditionally the big festival here.
And what day is that?
That
27th?
is the night of the 5th of January. So it's what would be in Ireland Little Christmas, or is it? So that's the big gift kind of arrival day. Historically, there wouldn't have been Santa Claus in Catalonia or Spain. The presents would arrive on the night of the 5th of January. And that's great crack, because you go to your local neighbourhood, and they have a big procession through the neighbourhood. The kings arrive, and they're like on floats. They're sitting up on these big chairs, and there's great excitement. You're waiting for them to come, and the children get really excited, and they pass by, and they throw. They have all these helpers on the float, and they throw out sweets, and you'd want to bring your elbows with you, because it can get pretty dirty.
For the sweets and stuff.
Yeah, trying to pick up the sweets on the ground. And then last year we went into the centre of the city for the first time, and as opposed to going to our local barrio, and you had hardcore operators there, like people bring in their ladders so you could get a good vantage point and stuff. Wow. And it was great fun, like, so that's very exciting. And
was there is there a big parade in Centre Town then?
Massive. It's kind of like St. Patrick's Day parade, or that music and stuff, like, so that's full on. The great Catalan kind of tradition at Christmas is El Caganer. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
Or Cagatillo? So this guy, it goes back centuries. So what happens for the kids is Cagatillo. Can I curse on this podcast? Yeah,
okay, right. It's Christmas.
So Cagatillo is Uncle Shit. So this guy historically he was a kind of a peasant type character who spends his year in the mountains, and then when a couple of weeks before Christmas, he flies in the window of your apartment or your house or whatever, and he lands by the Christmas tree, and he's a kind of log, and he's got this happy face on him, and a baratina, the kind of Catalan hat on him, and you feed him, the kids feed him every night running up to Christmas, and then on Christmas Day you hit him with a stick, and he poops out or he shits out toys or sweets for the kids. And a variation of that kind of exercise is in the markets in the run up to Christmas. You can buy El Cagonar. This is a guy, a little figurine of a guy making a shit, and they model them in celebrities of the day, Messi or Donald Trump or these kind of characters. So you should Google a picture of them. I bring them home as presents to Ireland every year to friends and stuff, or you'd get priests or nuns, and so you put them with your crib under the tree.
How are things at the moment in Barcelona?
Look, I mean, it's the same the world over, isn't it? Spain at large is really grappling with the virus. It's not doing so well, and Barcelona and Madrid, as the two big urban centres, the two big cities, are suffering the worst. So, I mean, that's consuming people because of the virus, and then the impact it's had on the economy.
I mean, tourism is a huge part of the economy of Barcelona. I mean, it's an industrial city, but tourism as well. It must have really affected it over the summer.
Oh, it's absolutely dramatic. The city is like a ghost town. Visitors to Barcelona would know Sagrada Familia, the Gaudi church in the city, that has stopped construction because the construction of that church depends on tourist income. The people who come along and pay the entrance fee to go into see the works, so that has stopped. So it's just everywhere. Like it's affected more than other countries because Spain is so dependent on tourism, and particularly a city like Barcelona.
You know, the situation in Catalan, like, has the political situation died down because of the health situation, or?
Yeah, undoubtedly. Just you can't like um, uh, obvious things like you can't protest. There's like every 11th of September is La Diada, the national day of independence in Catalonia, and since 2012 there have been marches in the city. You'd get up to 1.8 million people marching, people bussing in from all over the region, from the rural areas of Catalonia into the city, and it's peaceful protest, lots of colour, and it's like, for Irish listeners, it'd be the equivalent to St. Patrick's Day. Great kind of festival atmosphere. I mean, that didn't happen this year. You just can't do those big protests. People are focusing on just the day-to-day surviving. As we touched on, the economy has been shattered, so people have more immediate concerns. So that definitely has taken a step back, and it's not surprising to me either, because that Catalan independence struggle has kind of gone up and down through the centuries. It goes back like 3-4 centuries, that struggle for independence, but it gets serious, or gets more pronounced when the economy is doing badly. So before the last financial crash around 2008, 2009, the polling for independence was at about 20%. But it was the downturn, that big recession that hit 10 or 12 years ago, that accelerated the independence movement. And that's what brought the polling figures up to about 45% of people who want independence. So now, as people struggle with the coronavirus, that has receded. At the root as well, this Catalan independence struggle, it's not black and white. It's not 90% of Catalans want independence. At best, it's 50-50. Most Catalans have a dual identity. They feel kind of Spanish and Catalan at the same time. A lot of them will have their parents will be from other parts of Spain, Badajoz or Madrid or wherever, and they would have emigrated to, or migrated to, Barcelona, say, in the 60s, looking for work. So there's a big mix, and Barcelona itself, the city, is very, very multicultural. It's more in the rural areas that you have the real diehard Catalan separatists. So I would stress it's a kind of 50-50 breakdown in the population, and if the region does secede from Spain, it'll be a knife edge. It'll only be, by a couple of percent that a referendum would pass. So
the kids is it Catalan? The kids, when they go to school, is that the language that they use, Spanish, or how does it work there?
Yeah, it's a really pertinent question. They do. We have two kids. They're 7 and 2, and the 2-year-old, he'll be 3 next month. He's just started into big school as well. He's in the preschool part of it, but he'll be there until he's 18, alongside his sister, who's 5 years older than him. But they all go. The schooling is all through Catalan. It's amazing. Like, my wife is Spanish, or sorry, she's a Spanish speaker. She's from Venezuela, but the two kids now are doing everything through Catalan. It's absolutely fascinating to see it at play. Like, the girl, our daughter Chloe, she'll play with her friends, and it's a mix. Some friends she speaks to in Spanish because their parents are Spanish speaking, and some kids she'll speak in Catalan. In Catalan with them. I remember we were visiting friends of ours about 9 months ago, I'd say. They're an English couple, so the parents, we were all speaking English, and the two, Chloe and their daughter, were inside in the playroom playing, and this daughter would speak English at home because her parents are both English. But they started communicating or speaking in Catalan to each other, because that was the kind of language they hit on to communicate. It was amazing. Like Chloe by default would be a Spanish speaker, our daughter, but yet she navigates her way through these 3 languages. It's Catalan as well, I should stress, isn't a dialect. It's it's a completely different language to Spanish, or not completely, but very, very different. It's closer to French than Spanish. So, I mean, the joke here is people around Spain would call Catalans Polacos, Polish, because they think they sound like Poles when they speak. So, I mean, it's also very contentious, the language issue here.
What are they different personality-wise to the rest of Spain?
Yeah.
The leading question.
No, yeah. I at the risk of generalizing and stereotypes, but I enjoy them myself. Yes, they are. They're very different to other parts of Spain. Now, look, you have to take it on an individual case by case basis. People are people the world over, but I would see differences definitely between, generally speaking, again, I stress, between people from Catalonia and people from the south, in particular, from Andalusia. And Andalusians, or people in Madrid as well, in the center, they would be, for me, stereotypically Spanish people, very warm, open, madcap, just, great fun. Catalans, in comparison, are very reserved. They're quite difficult to get to know. They're a bit standoffish. Once you get to know them, they're fantastic. They're a gentle people. Like, it's very interesting. There's no armed terror, or there's no terrorism in Catalonia. In the Basque separatist struggle, you've had ETA, who are basically like the IRA. They've carried on a campaign for 30 years or whatever, exactly the same as the IRA, bombing and kidnapping and terrorist activity. You never had that in Catalonia. It's always been peaceful protests. They've been very canny and successful in getting things from the Madrid government, but through dialogue and through negotiation. Back to those differences, they are very, very reserved people. They would look quite aloof as well. They fancy themselves, they're the engine of the Spanish economy, more or less, along with the Basques. They see themselves as being successful and wealthy, and they would look down their nose a bit. And this isn't everybody, but I do honestly get this sense, the lazy Southerners, that kind of aspect. So they can be that kind of introverted, reserved, definitely more so than other parts of Spain.
Tell us, how long have you actually been in Barcelona?
10 years.
And you went there as a journalist, didn't you?
Yeah. It was, the usual story. Love. I met a girl who's now my wife. Met her at a wedding in Venezuela, and this was January or February, I think. And then she was moving to Barcelona the following August, to do a master's in publishing. So we stayed in touch. And then when she got to Spain, we started going backwards and forwards. I was living in Dublin at the time. Between Dublin and Barcelona, and after about 6 months of that, I decided to move over. It had kind of been in my head to do. I was in my 30s at this stage, and I was keen to do one more tour of the battlefield, to do a kind of year abroad or something. I was thinking of going to New York or somewhere like that. So moving wasn't that difficult a thing for me to do. I hadn't any ties in the country or such. So it was a great adventure for me. I was happy to do it, and things accelerated very quickly from there. And we have, the 2 kids now and all the rest of it. Yeah. So very happy here, and it's a good base for us, because it's a kind of halfway house between Ireland and it's Spanish speaking, and for her and her Venezuelan side of the family, and so it's a good spot for us to settle.
And it is a beautiful city, isn't it? I mean, do you love it there?
Oh my God, it's extraordinary. Absolutely adore it. For the first few years, we lived right in the centre in the Elborn, first of all, and then Raval beside La Rambla. And though that city centre is just enchanting, Gothic quarter. I mean, it's like a labyrinth. You can get lost in those streets just wandering around. I have got lost in them. They're these tiny medieval streets, or very narrow medieval streets.
Tiny little
You've
bars and
got
restaurants.
Oh yeah, and the cafe culture, sitting outside. Then you've got all the other aspects of the city. You've the beach front, Costa Brava up the coast. You've got the mountains behind you, the Pyrenees. Then a couple of hours away, it's in Barcelona. The culture and history of the city is fascinating, and you've got the architecture as well. Then, Gaudi has. There's 7 UNESCO heritage Gaudi sites in the city. I think there's only 2 or 3 UNESCO heritage sites in Ireland. It's staggering.
La Famiglia Sagria, that has to be one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. Often when you go to these buildings with the crowds, etc., I still would always tell people to go there. It's worth the queue. And
yeah. I'm the same. I tell them, not necessarily. You don't have to go in and go into pay the €20 or whatever and do the queues, but just to walk around it, it's breathtaking. Like he's absolutely, it was an extraordinary figure, and a very interesting personality as well. He was a devout Catholic and ascetic. Like he used to live on just a hard mattress in a kind of single room. He was completely ascetic, and he was killed. Then he was knocked down by a streetcar, a tram. He was backing onto the street, looking up at the church, and he was knocked over and killed. But, an amazing character.
You mentioned there, is it beside the Ramblers, Ravella? Is that what it's called? Ravella?
Yeah, Raval, that neighborhood. Yeah.
I spent a night along there doing tapas bars with that friend actually that used to live there. And that's why I always say to people also, like 1 street or 2 off the Ramblers, and then you're in the proper Barcelona.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I would advise anybody coming to the city in normal times, not, get off La Rambla. Don't ever eat there. It's overpriced and bad food. You'll find all the good tapas bars and restaurants further in. If you're walking down towards the sea along La Rambla, on the right hand side is Raval, and then on the other side is the Gothic quarter and Elborn. You've fantastic restaurants in those areas and bars. Raval especially is very earthy. That's the bottom half of the street is where the prostitutes hang out, and for over a century. But and it's very
good tip.
There's a huge kind of Pakistani and Indian ambience there, Moroccan ambience there. But we used to live there. I used to would take the dog out for a walk at like midnight or 1 a.m, and you'd see guys out in the park playing cricket. It was beautiful to see. So they've really brought a great energy, all those immigrants, to that neighborhood.
You're well known, obviously, with the Stand. Recently, you've been doing a lot talking about Messi and Barcelona. You're known for writing all over the world about that. So that has been. So he eventually stayed, didn't he? That was a surprise, wasn't it?
Messi, he did, yeah. It was 10 days. It was like living through the Cuban Missile Crisis. He eventually stepped back from the edge of the cliff.
Was he just looking for more money, or was it?
Yeah, it's a good question. No, honestly, no, definitely not. I mean, he wouldn't get more money wherever he went. Not if he wanted to stay with an elite club. He's so well paid at Barca, like 106 million gross in salary, and then his own situation could change. He's really, really upset now, especially with Luis Suarez has gone to Atletico Madrid. He got very upset about that he was kicked out of the club. But Messi's situation could change, within a year is a long time. He could kind of settle down a bit and work, with a new regime. And the places he's looking to go at, say Man City is the front runner. Who knows what will happen there? I wouldn't be surprised if Guardiola gets sacked or walks away in the next year. He tends to burn out at clubs, so maybe that won't be as attractive for him. I also wondering why he would want to go to Manchester, to a city like that, and leave the good weather, and all his family are settled here in this. Just they live outside the city in a beautiful area. That would be very disruptive for his kids and stuff. He's already admitted that there was a lot of tears from all the family when he said back in August that he was moving. So yeah,
life he's been there.
Yeah. Since he was a 13-year-old. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of his family are here. His brother and his sister and his parents have a house close by, although they moved to Milan, or his father did a couple of months ago, or a few months ago. So most his life is in the city. So
you have a history with Messi. You wrote that great book El Clásico, and you've done obviously loads of articles. Am I right in saying you went to Argentina to go to where he's from? Was that right?
Yeah, a few years. I think it was 2017. I went down to Rosario, his hometown. It's the third biggest city in Argentina, for about 10 days to do a couple of stories on him, on his background. One was about the youth team he played with. They were called La Máquina del 87, the machine of 87. All the kids were born that year in 87, and they played for Newell's Old Boys. That was Messi's club in Rosario, a famous club, a famous nursery of football in Argentina. A lot of great players like Jorge Valdano or Batistuta would have come out of the club. Or Marcelo Bielsa is from that club. The stadium is actually called after him, the Leeds United manager at the moment. That was a real cradle for Messi. That team was extraordinary. And Messi obviously was their key player. He scored like 500 or 600 goals during his time at this with them. He was very young at this stage, but from around 6 or 7 to 13. So I just tracked down some of his old teammates and spoke to them, and family members and his old coaches, and also did a piece on his brother, who's a bit of the black sheep of the family, Matthias. He's been in trouble with the law back in Rosario, and he's hangs out or has connections with Los Manos, the big drugs cartel in Argentina, one of the most fearsome drug gangs in South America. So I was just digging into that story as well.
And also you went to Madeira for Ronaldo, didn't you? Was that part of that book, or was that a separate?
Yeah, that was separate after that. I went there a couple of years ago to write a story on Ronaldo. So Madeira is this island. It's closer to Africa than Portugal. Ronaldo would be Portuguese. He obviously plays with the Portugal national team. So it's part of Portugal, but it's completely out in the middle of nowhere. And I had a pretty hair-raising flight into the island because it's so windy. Flights often get cancelled in there. It's difficult to take off and land on the island. I'd encourage people. I remember checking at the time. I don't know if flights are still going there, but I remember noticing at the time that flights were going from Dublin. So if you're thinking about the Canary Islands or something for a holiday, I would tell you go to Madeira instead. It's far nicer. It's a beautiful, beautiful island.
Green, isn't it? Much more.
Very lush. Yeah. Very verdant. And every house nearly on the island or apartment has a view of the sea. It's quite mountainous, and it kind of flows down to the waterfronts. So absolutely beautiful island, and Funchal is the main city there. It's only 100,000 people. That's where Ronaldo's grew up. He ended up going to the Sporting Academy in Lisbon when he was 12. So he kind of left the island at that stage, but he still has a house there, and he spent the lockdown there as well. So it's a beautiful island.
You'd recommend it?
Hugely so, yeah.
And tell us, you've written the book on the El Clásico, and you've been to many, I'm sure. Like, how does it compare being in Barcelona and Madrid?
Yeah, there would be.
You could pick one.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
won a
I
Clásico.
prefer the Bernabeu Stadium. The structure of it, the stands are a lot more vertical. You're right on top of the pitch. Um, they're both very similar in some respects, and this would apply for stadiums around the big clubs. The stadiums around the world now are very similar. You know, the pitches are perfect, and the facilities are in good nick. Although the Camp Nou, the Barcelona stadium, is quite dishevelled at this stage, but it's still the first time. I'll never forget the first time I went to Clásico there in October, November 2010, and just walking up the steps and coming out into the stands or the terraces and seeing like 100,000 people around, and it's just an incredible atmosphere, especially late at night in the winter. And all the great games I've been to have been those night fixtures, particularly in the Champions League, at both those stadiums when they're under floodlights. And the Clásicos, there'd be an extra edge. Obviously, especially on both sides. The hatred is mutual. Um, the atmosphere is amazing. It would be kind of diluted now, I feel, because this is pre-COVID, but because you have so many tourists and because these big games are so kind of gentrified that the fans are being kind of priced out of it, the local fans. You'll only have like a cohort behind the one end of each ground where the real hardcore fans go. So it's definitely not like, I wasn't there, like, but compared to the 80s or 90s when it was a lot more raucous.
I haven't been to so many. When it was Ronaldo and Messi together, did that add an extra level of, to the best players of all time?
Undoubtedly. And for several years they went toe to toe. Like, I think Messi has scored about 26 goals in Clásicos. Ronaldo maybe, I don't know, about 18 or something. So yeah, there was games. There was one in October 2012. I remember 2-2 draw. They both scored two each. And they've scored some incredible goals there in 2012, April 2012. Ronaldo scored the winning goal, and which wrapped up the league title effectively for Real Madrid that day. It was the last, in April 2017, last minute, Messi scored an unbelievable goal to help Barca win 3-2. The best, I would say, Clásico I was ever at, or the most enjoyable, was the one in it would have been around May 2011 in the Champions League semi-final, first leg. Messi scored this goal. He scored two goals that day. They won 2-0. But the second goal he got, people would remember, probably, he got the ball. Busquets just touched it to him around the halfway line, and he dribbled through 5 or 6 players and slotted it into the net. It was just out of this world. But so yeah, they've just lit up that fixture, and there's been a kind of peak moment in that rivalry over the last 10 years, which is dwindling now, where they were the best, far and away the two best teams in the world. This was coming off the back of Spain's success in international tournaments, win the World Cup and European Championships. So the backbone of both teams had all those players: Xavi, Iniesta, all the rest of them, Sergio Ramos, and then you had Messi and Ronaldo just lifting it another notch. So yeah, it was incredible to watch them in their peak.
Amazing times. Just something I wanted to go back to. You mentioned earlier in the interview that you met your wife in Venezuela. That was a country that used to be on my bucket list, kind of in the last few years has kind of come off. But what is Venezuela like? It looks amazing, kind of tropical.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's paradise. I mean, it's on the equator, the Caribbean, those beautiful sandy beaches, like gorgeous beaches. The weather it's 25, 26 degrees year round. Like, you're never too hot, and the people there are so warm and open, and Like I know when I go to, and it would apply across South America, although people in Peru and Bolivia would be a bit more reserved, and Chile, Zambia as well. But when I'm going to a bar or restaurant in Spain, I can tell immediately, or when I'm in Barcelona, I can tell immediately if the staff are South American, because they'll be so warm and open and just willing to have a chat and interested in you. So that applies in spades in Venezuela. The people are just fantastic there. But the country has been just turned upside down in the last 20 years with Chavismo. Since Hugo Chavez came into power, not so much in the first 10 years of his reign, but he did bring in the division and he made it a very divisive society. But now in the last 5 or 10 years, he died in 2013. His successor has just let the country go to rack and ruin. They've suffered also from global factors. The price of oil has dropped. So, but the country now has come to a standstill. It's like Cuba. It's just nothing works there anymore. And this used to be the Switzerland of South America. You know, it was the thriving country. Like people used to emigrate from Spain and Italy there in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. All the big soccer teams, I remember, would have gone there on tours and stuff. But now it's just dead in the water, and it's really worrying for us because we've family there. The shortages of electricity, medicine, like I could tell you, food. You know, it's just.
And you know, there's islands off. Is it off Caracas? There's lots of islands off of there. Is that right?
Yeah,
That was the
yeah.
area that looked amazing too.
Oh my God, Los Roques. I didn't go. I haven't been there, but Michelle, my wife, has been there many times. Further up the coast would be absolutely stunning. If anybody wants to go to their idea of, it's very secluded as well. Los Roques, it's like pristine beaches and absolutely gorgeous area. But some of those other islands directly off Caracas, I would have been there to Isla Margarita many times. Beautiful spot. So and then if you go inland, I haven't done much traveling inland. That you have the Amazon. I mean, you've got waterfalls, just spectacular scenery and countryside. But
And in Barcelona, is there somewhere where, like, you know, you or Barcelona people, Barcelonans, where do you go on holidays? Is it Costa Brava, or where do people?
yeah, it is typically. Although for us now, the last 2 summers, we normally go for a week. The first week in September before the schools go back, and it's a lot cheaper than July and August. Everybody in Spain goes on holidays in August. Like all the factories and the offices shut down for 3 weeks in August. So it's, to go in that first week in September is a good time to go if you can. We've typically gone up to Costa Brava north towards the French border. But for the last couple of years, we've gone south, and we love it because it's a lot quieter, and you don't have unless you go to one of the really rich resorts. Some of those Costa Brava spots have a lot of the hotels on the seafronts, and they're overrun with tourists and that. So I'd really recommend people to go south if they can. For Sitges would be south of the city as well. We go there a lot on day trips if we've got friends living there and stuff. So that's a beautiful spot. But even if you go further down the coast, Messi lives actually beside Sitges, Castelldefels, Suarez as well has got a house there. But those spots south are beautiful as well, and more secluded.
So my last question is always, if you close your eyes and take 4 deep breaths, where would your happy place be?
There's one place I've been that has always stayed with me, and that was Black Rock Desert in Nevada. I went to the Burning Man Festival a couple of times in the 90s, and it's still going, although it wasn't held this year. But it's this festival, an art festival, basically. It originated in San Francisco, and they moved out to the desert in 1990, and it's held every Labor Day weekend, the first weekend in September. And when I was going there, like, there was about 6,000 or 8,000 people. I think it's up to about 75,000 people go to it now. But they set up a temporary city in the desert, and they construct all these art installations in the desert. Some of them will be, they'll be working on them maybe in the city during the year, or they'll go out to the desert in the summer and work on them for a couple of months or a few weeks to build these huge art installations. And then everybody arrives. The festival goes for about 8 or 10 days, and the economy is a barter economy. You can't buy anything there. You have to bring your own water and your own food supplies. And these art installations would just blow your mind. Extraordinary. They would reconstruct a Hollywood Western movie set, and so you'd walk down the street, and it was like you're in the middle of high noon. They'd have a giant woman, like a 30-40 foot woman, and there'd be a shower spraying from between her legs. So people would be having their shower there in the morning, or at nighttime. Then the city comes alive. You'll have an opera. I remember seeing an opera at 2 or 3 in the morning, 200 people opera, just out of this world. And there's an amazing camaraderie and kind of community spirit there, because everybody's in it together. And it then concludes on the second last night. They burn the man. They have this kind of like Nuremberg rally procession through the city, and they come to the big man, and then everybody starts chanting "Burn the man," and they burn the man. It's a kind of ritual, and it has at its roots, it's kind of a pagan festival, I guess, but then after that, the whole city is torched. They burn all the art installations. This is work people have put in, months of work into it, and everybody's in, fancy dress costume or whatever. And so the whole place is torched. And then at the end of the festival, everybody clears up their own debris, and the philosophy or the mantra is leave no trace. So like people stay on there for a couple of weeks after the festival to ensure that the playa, the desert, is returned to its original condition. But I've never felt as moved, and I'd always struggled to explain it to people, the atmosphere there. It's such a life-affirming experience to take yourself out of the normal rush of kind of life and live, and it shows the possibilities for communities, that kind of that community spirit that's engendered, maybe because it's only temporary, it's possible, but it's an unbelievable atmosphere, and I'd encourage anybody to go to it. So that kind of, I'd say that has stayed with me, those experiences there. So I would say Burning Man, yeah.
Thanks, Richard, for great insight into life in Barcelona. And I just want to recommend his second book, El Clásico, Barcelona versus Real Madrid, football's greatest rivalry. Great insight into both teams and, of course, the golden era with Messi and Ronaldo. I would ask if you could please subscribe to Apple Podcast so a new episode will appear in your library every week. I would also really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, as it helps others to discover this podcast. To find out who's on every Tuesday, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Travel Tales with Fergal. Stay safe and keep dreaming of future travels.
Travel Tales with Fergal.